Hi everyone, I'm Lala. Welcome to Lala 的中文课. Today's video is especially important for beginners. If you've just started learning Chinese, I'm pretty sure you've heard some of the misconceptions we're going to talk about today. For example, Chinese has 50,000 characters, and most Chinese people only know 3,000 to 4,000 characters. Which is true? And this video isn't just about clearing up those misunderstandings. More importantly, I'm going to share some really important advice that can completely change the way you learn Chinese. By the way, if you want to hear more real spoken Chinese, feel free to check out my other videos. In all of my vlogs and most of my grammar videos, I speak Chinese. Alright, enough talking, let's get started. When I ask beginner Chinese learners basic questions like, how many Chinese characters have you heard there are? Well, some people may say 50,000, and some even say 100,000. Well, is that actually true? No, not really. First, I want to tell you something surprising. 99% of Chinese people probably don't even know more than 5,000 Chinese characters. The total number of modern Chinese characters is actually only around 11,000. Chinese students graduating from high school usually knows about 3,500 characters. And honestly, only Chinese language professors, scholars, or really experienced Chinese teacher in high school would know 5,000 or more. I don't even think I know 5,000 characters because in real life, I simply don't need that many. So the number of commonly used Chinese characters is much smaller than many learners imagine. But then why do so many people think Chinese has a terrifying number of characters? I think many learners confuse two ideas in Chinese, 字和词, or characters and words. Modern Chinese has about 3,500 commonly used characters, but the number of commonly used words is much bigger, around 56,000. Most Chinese people probably know about 3,000 to 4,000 characters, but their vocabulary size is usually around 11,000 or even more. So what's the difference between a character and a word in Chinese? Let's look at a few very simple examples. Here are 6 basic Chinese characters. 大 big, 小 small, 人 person, 口 mouth, 山 mountain, 水 water. In Chinese, a single character can sometimes be a word by itself, but Chinese also loves combining characters together to create new words. For example, when you combine 大 and 小, you get 大小, big and small, that means size. And 大 with 人, person, 大人, big person, that means adult. And 小 with 人, 小人, small person. Does that mean child? No, it means something more like villain or petty person. Now let's combine 人 and 口, 人口, it means population. And 口 with 水, 口水, mouth water. Can you guess what does it mean? It means saliva. And 山 with 口, 山口, mountain mouth. It means a mountain pass. 山 and 水, 山水, mountain and water, that means natural scenery. And 大 水, big water. Can you guess what does it mean? It means flood. By learning just these 6 characters, you can quickly understand 17 new Chinese words. So now you can probably see the difference. Sometimes one character is already a word, but when characters combine together, they create many more new words. So once you know a relatively small number of characters, you can start understanding many more words very quickly. And from those words we just learned, you can probably notice something interesting about Chinese vocabulary. It's actually very logical. This makes learning new words much easier. In English, when new things appear, people often create completely new words for them. But in Chinese, we don't create new characters. Instead, we take existing characters and combine them in logical ways. For example, look at this. This is a machine used for running. Running, 跑步. So in Chinese, it's called 跑步机, literally running machine. And this is a machine used for sucking up dust. So in Chinese, it's called 吸尘器. 吸 suck, 尘 dust, 器 device or machine. Now from these two words, you may notice that both 机 and 器 seem to have something to do with machines. So how do you simply say machine in Chinese? Do you say 机 or 器? Actually, neither. Why? This brings us to another common misunderstanding about Chinese. You may have heard people say something like, Chinese is impossible because one pronunciation can mean hundreds of different things. For example, the sound 是. If you only look at the pinyin 是, it could mean room, world, city, swear, decorate, power, suitable, and many more. At first glance, that sounds terrifying. How could anyone possibly understand what people mean? But in real life, that almost never causes any confusion. Why? Because most Chinese words are not just one syllable. Let's go back to the sound 是 again. If you ask, how many meanings can the sound 是 have in Chinese? The answer is a lot. But if you turn the question around and ask, how do you actually say these words in Chinese? The answers are world, 世界, style, 方式, room, 房间, city, 城市, suitable, 合适, swear, 发誓. They are all two-syllable words and they don't sound similar. So even though one syllable like 是 may have many meanings by itself, Chinese people usually combine syllables together into longer words. That's why in actual conversation, misunderstandings almost never happen. In modern Chinese, many characters can't really be used independently in conversation anymore. You can think of it this way. Many Chinese characters need to get married to another character before they can become a complete everyday word. In fact, around 74% of Chinese words are two-syllable words, and many one-syllable words like 大, 小, 水. These basic everyday words usually own their syllable, meaning there aren't many common words sharing the same sound, so they usually don't cause confusion either. Of course, Chinese does have a lot of homophones, and that has deeply influenced the Chinese culture, especially things like wordplay, lucky phrases, and culture taboos. If you're interested in this topic, check out this video here. You may have heard people compare learning Chinese vocabulary to building with Lego. Once you learn some basic learning blocks, you can create many more things. So here's my biggest pieces of advice for beginners. Whenever you learn a new Chinese word, try to remember the meaning of each individual character. Yes, it takes more time at the beginning, but later once you encounter new vocabulary, you'll keep seeing the same characters again and again. If you remember the meaning of the characters, not just the meaning of the whole word, learning new vocabulary becomes much faster in the future. That's why I believe slow is fast. Another very common frustration for Chinese learners is measure words. A lot of people believe Chinese measure words are completely random and impossible to understand. And yes, technically, Chinese has hundreds of measure words, but honestly, most learners only need a relatively small number of common ones. And more importantly, most Chinese measure words actually do follow patterns and logic. They are not as chaotic as they first appear. I have made a video explaining how to remember common measure words more easily, so definitely check that out if you are struggling with them. Alright, that's all for today. I hope this video helped you see Chinese a little differently. And don't forget, most of my videos are fully in Chinese. If you want to practice your listening skills and learn natural everyday Chinese, feel free to check out my vlogs. See you next time. Bye bye.